Day 72, Judges 19 through 21. Everyone did as they saw fit. 19. A Levite and his concubine. 20. The Israelite punished the Benjamite. 21. Wives for the Benjamite. Chapter 20. We cannot expect the presence of God with us in our enterprises unless we seek it by humbling ourselves before Him. Verse 26. He is not under obligation to prosper us. Men are often so confident that God owes them His favor because they think their cause a good one, that they think it needless to humble themselves before God in repentance.
Chapter 19. It happened in those days, when there was no king in Israel, that there was a certain Levite sojourning on the far side of the hill country of Ephraim, who took to him a concubine out of Bethlehem, Judah. His concubine played the prostitute against him, and went away from him to her father's house to Bethlehem, Judah, and was there for the space of 4 months. Her husband arose and went after her, to speak kindly to her, to bring her again, having his servant with him, and a couple of donkeys. And she brought him into her father's house. And when the father of the young lady saw him, he rejoiced to meet him. His father-in-law, the young lady's father, retained him, and he stayed with him 3 days. So they ate and drank and lodged there. It happened on the 4th day, that they arose early in the morning, and he rose up to depart. And the young lady's father said to his son-in-law, Strengthen your heart with a morsel of bread, and afterward you shall go your way. So they sat down, and ate and drank, both of them together. And the young lady's father said to the man, Please stay all night, and let your heart be merry. The man rose up to depart, but his father-in-law urged him, and he lodged there again. He arose early in the morning on the 5th day to depart, and the young lady's father said, Please strengthen your heart, and stay until the day declines. And they ate, both of them. When the man rose up to depart, he and his concubine and his servant, his father-in-law, the young lady's father, said to him, Look, now the day draws toward evening. Please stay all night. Look, the day grows to an end. Stay here, that your heart may be merry, and tomorrow you can leave early on your way, that you may go home. But the man wouldn't stay that night, but he rose up and departed, and came over against Jebus, the same is Jerusalem. And there was with him a couple of donkeys saddled. His concubine also was with him. When they were there by Jebus, the day was far spent, and the servant said to his master, Please come and let us turn aside into the city of the Jebusites, and lodge in it. His master said to him, We won't turn aside into the city of a foreigner, that is not of the children of Israel, but we will pass over to Gibeah. He said to his servant, Come and let us draw near to one of these places, and we will lodge in Gibeah or in Ramah. So they passed on and went their way, and the sun went down on them near to Gibeah, which belongs to Benjamin. They turned aside there to go in to lodge in Gibeah, and he went in, and sat down in the street of the city, for there was no man who took them into his house to lodge. Behold, there came an old man from his work out of the field at evening. Now the man was of the hill country of Ephraim, and he sojourned in Gibeah, but the men of the place were Benjamites. He lifted up his eyes and saw the wayfaring man in the street of the city. And the old man said, Where are you going, and where have you come from? He said to him, We are passing from Bethlehem, Judah, to the farther side of the hill country of Ephraim. I am from there, and I went to Bethlehem, Judah, and now I am going to the house of the Lord, and there is no man who takes me into his house. Yet there is both straw and provender for our donkeys, and there is bread and wine also for me, and for your handmaid, and for the young man who is with your servants. There is no want of anything. The old man said, Peace be to you. Howsoever, let all your wants lie on me, only don't stay in the street. So he brought him into his house, and gave the donkeys food, and they washed their feet, and ate and drank. As they were making their hearts merry, behold, the men of the city, certain base fellows, beset the house round about, beating at the door, And they spoke to the master of the house, the old man, saying, Bring out the man who came into your house, that we may know him. The master of the house, went out to them, and said to them, No, my brothers, please don't act so wickedly, seeing that this man has come into my house. Don't do this folly. Behold, here is my daughter, a virgin, and his concubine. I will bring them out now, and you humble them, and do with them what seems good to you. But to this man don't do any such folly. But the men wouldn't listen to him. So the man laid hold on his concubine, and brought her forth to them. And they knew her, and abused her all the night until the morning. And when the day began to spring, they let her go. Then came the woman in the dawning of the day, and fell down at the door of the man's house where her lord was, until it was light. Her lord rose up in the morning, and opened the doors of the house, and went out to go his way. And behold, the woman, his concubine, was fallen down at the door of the house, with her hands on the threshold. He said to her, Rise up, and let us be going. But none answered. Then he took her up on the donkey, and the man rose up and went to his place. When he was come to his house, he took a knife, and laid hold on his concubine, and divided her, limb by limb, into 12 pieces, and sent her throughout all the borders of Israel. It was so that all who saw it said, There was no such deed done, nor seen, from the day that the children of Israel came up out of the land of Egypt to this day. Consider it, take counsel, and speak. Chapter 20. Then all the children of Israel went out, and the congregation was assembled as one man, from Dan even to Beersheba, with the land of Gilead, to the Lord at Mizpah. The chiefs of all the people, even of all the tribes of Israel, presented themselves in the assembly of the people of God, 400,000 footmen who drew the sword. Now the children of Benjamin heard that the children of Israel had gone up to Mizpah. The children of Israel said, Tell us, how is this wickedness brought to pass? The Levite, the husband of the woman who was murdered, answered, I came into Gibeah that belongs to Benjamin, I and my concubine, to lodge. The men of Gibeah rose against me, and beset the house round about me by night. They thought to have killed me, and my concubine they raped, and she is dead. I took my concubine and cut her in pieces, and sent her throughout all the country of the inheritance of Israel, for they have committed lewdness and folly in Israel. Behold, you children of Israel, all of you, give here your advice and counsel. All the people arose as one man, saying, We will not any of us go to his tent, neither will any of us turn to his house. But now this is the thing which we will do to Gibeah. We will go up against it by lot, and we will take 10 men of 100 throughout all the tribes of Israel, and 100 of 1,000, and 1,000 out of 10,000, to get food for the people, that they may do, when they come to Gibeah of Benjamin, according to all the folly that they have worked in Israel. So all the men of Israel were gathered against the city, knit together as one man. The tribes of Israel sent men throughout all the tribe of Benjamin, saying, What wickedness is this that has happened among you? Now therefore deliver up the men, the base fellows who are in Gibeah, that we may put them to death, and put away evil from Israel. But Benjamin would not listen to the voice of their brothers, the children of Israel. The children of Benjamin gathered themselves together out of the cities to Gibeah, to go out to battle against the children of Israel. The children of Benjamin were numbered on that day out of the cities 26,000 men who drew the sword, besides the inhabitants of Gibeah, who were numbered 700 chosen men. Among all this people there were 700 chosen men left-handed. Every one could sling stones at a hairbreadth and not miss. The men of Israel, besides Benjamin, were numbered 400,000 men who drew swords. All of these were men of war. The children of Israel arose and went up to Bethel, and asked counsel of God. And they said, Who shall go up for us first to battle against the children of Benjamin? The Lord said, Judah shall go up first. The children of Israel rose up in the morning and encamped against Gibeah. The men of Israel went out to battle against Benjamin, and the men of Israel set the battle in array against them at Gibeah. The children of Benjamin came forth out of Gibeah, and destroyed down to the ground of the Israelites on that day 22,000 men. The people, the men of Israel, encouraged themselves, and set the battle again in array in a place where they set themselves in array the first day. The children of Israel went up and wept before the Lord until evening, and they asked of the Lord, saying, Shall I draw near to battle against the children of Benjamin my brother? The Lord said, Go up against him. The children of Israel came near against the children of Benjamin the second day. Benjamin went forth against them out of Gibeah the second day, and destroyed down to the ground of the children of Israel again 18,000 men. All these drew the sword. Then all the children of Israel and all the people went up and came to Bethel and wept, and sat there before the Lord, and fasted that day until evening, and they offered burnt offerings and peace offerings before the Lord. The children of Israel asked of the Lord, for the ark of the covenant of God was there in those days, and Phinehas, the son of Eleazar, the son of Aaron, stood before it in those days, saying, Shall I yet again go out to battle against the children of Benjamin my brother, or shall I cease? The Lord said, Go up, for tomorrow I will deliver him into your hand. Israel set liers in wait against Gibeah round about. The children of Israel went up against the children of Benjamin on the third day, and set themselves in array against Gibeah as at other times. The children of Benjamin went out against the people, and were drawn away from the city, and they began to strike and kill of the people as at other times, in the highways, of which one goes up to Bethel, and the other to Gibeah, in the field, about 30 men of Israel. The children of Benjamin said, They are struck down before us as at the first. But the children of Israel said, Let us flee and draw them away from the city to the highways. All the men of Israel rose up out of their place, and set themselves in array at Baal Tamar. And the liers in wait of Israel broke forth out of their place, even out of Mare Geba. There came over against Gibeah 10,000 chosen men out of all Israel, and the battle was sore, but they didn't know that evil was close on them. The Lord struck Benjamin before Israel, and the children of Israel destroyed of Benjamin that day 25,100 men. All these drew the sword. So the children of Benjamin saw that they were struck, for the men of Israel gave place to Benjamin, because they trusted to the liers in wait whom they had set against Gibeah. The liers in wait hurried, and rushed on Gibeah, and the liers in wait drew themselves along, and struck all the city with the edge of the sword. Now the appointed sign between the men of Israel and the liers in wait was that they should make a great cloud of smoke rise up out of the city. The men of Israel turned in the battle, and Benjamin began to strike and kill of the men of Israel about 30 persons, for they said, Surely they are struck down before us as in the first battle. But when the cloud began to rise up out of the city in a pillar of smoke, the Benjamites looked behind them, and behold, the whole of the city went up in smoke to the sky. The men of Israel turned, and the men of Benjamin were dismayed, for they saw that evil had come on them. Therefore they turned their backs before the men of Israel to the way of the wilderness. But the battle followed hard after them, and those who came out of the cities destroyed them in the midst of it. They enclosed the Benjamites round about, and chased them, and trod them down at their resting place, as far as over against Gibeah toward the sunrise. There fell of Benjamin 18,000 men. All these were men of valor. They turned and fled toward the wilderness to the rock of Rimmon, and they gleaned of them in the highways 5,000 men, and followed after them to Gittim, and struck of them 2,000 men. So that all who fell that day of Benjamin were 25,000 men who drew the sword. All these were men of valor. But 600 men turned and fled toward the wilderness to the rock of Rimmon, and abode in the rock of Rimmon 4 months. The men of Israel turned again on the children of Benjamin, and struck them with the edge of the sword, both the entire city and the cattle, and all that they found. Moreover, all the cities which they found they set on fire. Chapter 21. Now the men of Israel had sworn in Mizpah, saying, There shall not any of us give his daughter to Benjamin as a wife. The people came to Bethel and sat there until evening before God, and lifted up their voices and wept. They said, O Lord, the God of Israel, why has this happened in Israel, that there should be today one tribe lacking in Israel? It happened on the next day that the people rose early, and built there an altar, and offered burnt offerings and peace offerings. The children of Israel said, Who is there among all the tribes of Israel who didn't come up in the assembly of the Lord? For they had made a great oath concerning him who didn't come up to the Lord to Mizpah, saying, He shall surely be put to death. The children of Israel grieved for Benjamin their brother, and said, There is one tribe cut off from Israel this day. What shall we do for wives for those who remain, seeing we have sworn by the Lord that we will not give them of our daughters for wives? They said, What one is there of the tribes of Israel who didn't come up to the Lord to Mizpah? Behold, there came none to the camp from Jabesh Gilead to the assembly. For when the people were numbered, behold, there were none of the inhabitants of Jabesh Gilead there. The congregation sent there 12,000 men of the most valiant, and commanded them, saying, Go and strike the inhabitants of Jabesh Gilead with the edge of the sword, with the women and the little ones. This is the thing you shall do. You shall utterly destroy every male, and every woman who has lain with a man. They found among the inhabitants of Jabesh Gilead 400 young virgins, who had not known man by lying with him, and they brought them to the camp to Shiloh, which is in the land of Canaan. The whole congregation sent and spoke to the children of Benjamin who were in the rock of Rimmon, and proclaimed peace to them. Benjamin returned at that time, and they gave them the women whom they had saved alive of the women of Jabesh Gilead, yet so they weren't enough for them. The people grieved for Benjamin, because that the Lord had made a breach in the tribes of Israel. Then the elders of the congregation said, What will we do for wives for those who remain, seeing the women are destroyed out of Benjamin? They said, There must be an inheritance for those who are escaped of Benjamin, that a tribe not be blotted out from Israel. However, we may not give them wives of our daughters, for the children of Israel had sworn, saying, Cursed be he who gives a wife to Benjamin. They said, Behold, there is a feast of the Lord from year to year in Shiloh, which is on the north of Bethel, on the east side of the highway that goes up from Bethel to Shechem, and on the south of Labonah. They commanded the children of Benjamin, saying, Go and lie in wait in the vineyards, and see, and look, if the daughters of Shiloh come out to dance in the dances. Then you come out of the vineyards, and catch you every man his wife of the daughters of Shiloh, and go to the land of Benjamin. It shall be, when their fathers or their brothers come to complain to us, that we will say to them, Grant them graciously to us, because we didn't take for each man his wife in battle. Neither did you give them to them, else you would now be guilty. The children of Benjamin did so, and took them wives according to their number of those who danced, whom they carried off, and they went and returned to their inheritance, and built the cities and lived in them. The children of Israel departed there at that time, every man to his tribe and to his family, and they went out from there every man to his inheritance. In those days there was no king in Israel. Every man did that which was right in his own eyes.